True crime enthusiasts, it's Rabia Chaudhry
and Ellen Marsh.
You are invited to join us on Rabia and Ellen Solve the Case, a true crime talk show.
Grab a front row seat as we, along with our special celebrity guests, dissect our favorite true crime cases every other Thursday.
And between those episodes, join us as we talk about current true crime headlines in our About Damn Crime series.
Skip the ordinary and dive into extraordinary investigations and conversations with us.
Subscribe now on your favorite podcast platform, and let's unravel these captivating stories together.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 358 of the True Crime All the Time Unsolved podcast. I'm Mike Ferguson, and with me, as always, is my partner in true crime, Mike Gibson. Gibby, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing good. How about you?
I'm doing very well. You know, we talked about this on Patreon, but my wife's on vacation. You know, she's a teacher, so she's on spring break. Of course, I'm not on vacation. You and I still have to work, and so she's in sunny Florida, and I'm up here dealing with bad weather in Ohio.
Yeah, wind, rain,
possible tornadoes,
maybe snow tomorrow morning.
I know, that's like so unbelievable. Let's go ahead and give our Patreon shout outs. We had Caitlin Chacos.
Hey, Caitlin.
Sue.
What's going on, Sue?
Khalil Jones.
Hey, there's Khalil.
Jillian Ogilvy.
Ogilvy.
Riss.
What's going on, Riss?
Luca Peterson.
Hey, thanks, Luca.
Scott Raboyne.
What's going on, Scott?
Ashley Horner.
Hey, Horner.
Tasha Deakins.
Thank you, Deakins.
Shelby.
Hey, good old Shelby.
Shanna Shaw.
Hey, Shanna.
Dana McNeil.
McNeil?
Mm-hmm.
That's all.
Okay.
Yeah.
Fiona jumped out at our highest level.
I like that name, Fiona.
Yeah. Will Jennings.
Hey, Will.
Beverly Sadalek.
Well, thank you, Beverly.
And last but not least, Mike on mute.
Well, thank you, Mike.
Appreciate it. And then if we go back into the vault, this week we selected Connie Clark.
Hey, appreciate that, Connie.
Yeah, appreciate the new Patreon support, the continued support. It really helps us out.
You know, when you said Mike on mute, I should not have said anything. It's been like Mike on mute. Get it?
Oh, I was playing like I was on mute.
I gotcha. You're good. You're good.
So we have an episode out right now on True Crime All the Time on Sammy Almari. And, you know, this is a fascinating case. Sammy met a woman named Nadine Abaris through an online dating website. He lived in New York. She lived in Wales. The two kind of fell in love, long distance. And the problem is he was very controlling, and it turned bad.
It did.
Real bad. But that's out now. Make sure you check it out. All right, buddy. Are you ready to get into this episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved?
I am ready.
We're talking about Bobby Fuller, who was a rising star in the music world during the 1960s. And he died under mysterious circumstances just before it was said he was probably going to break out, right? He was getting ready to start a solo career. It was thought that, you know, he could have been a really big deal.
Remember when I had that boy band that I was in?
Yep.
And we thought we were going to be pretty big.
Yeah. It was called 32 Degrees, I think is what it was.
Yeah, because we were like
frozen.
Chill.
But this is a case like many unsolved where, you know, the police kind of have one theory, but the family doesn't believe it. They have a differing opinion.
They do.
On what happened to their loved one. Robert Gaston Fuller was born on October 22nd, 1942 in Goose Creek, Texas. Bobby was only 23 years old when he died. And I know a lot of people die young, but it does seem as though people in the music industry over the years have died young.
Yeah. Remember that time we did the one podcast about the people that died age 27?
Oh, you're talking about the Morrisons and the Joplins.
Yeah.
And I don't think we did a whole podcast on that.
I remember we talked about it.
We might have talked about it, but there was no entire podcast on that.
Yeah.
But yeah, it just seems like a lot of music stars have died at an early age. Now, some of that's attributable to their lifestyle,
Sure,
and drugs and choices and things like that. Bobby's parents were Lawson and Lorraine Fuller. Bobby had an older brother from Lorraine's previous marriage named Jack and a younger brother named Randall. Bobby first became interested in music at the age of 4. And it was said he was able to play the piano by age 5.
Oh, that's impressive.
Yeah, I know you were kind of a piano savant as well.
I played the little tiny one.
Yeah, you were really good at it.
Yeah.
There's a video that I've seen. I don't know why you have it on your cell phone, but...
You give me any 8-key piano, and I'll blow you away with it.
The El Paso Times described Bobby as aloof and circumspect as a young boy. He preferred to be alone studying music. He tried out a few instruments before he decided to dedicate himself to playing the drums. It always amazes me when somebody becomes really, really good at one instrument.
Yeah.
But I think there are some of these people that are just so musically inclined, they can pick up just about anything and play it.
It's super impressive. To me, it's always been super impressive.
By age 12, Bobby had joined a jazz band in Salt Lake City where the family moved during his early childhood.
Hey, you always love jazz, don't you?
No, I do. I've never liked jazz.
I thought you would go to the jazz clubs every now and then.
No.
What clubs were you going to?
Different kind.
Not the jazz.
No. Okay. No. Bobby was influenced by jazz artists, but he also idolized singers like Elvis Presley, Roy Orbison, and Buddy Holly. And I'll be honest with you, those are 3 of my favorites. Elvis, obviously, at the top, but I really like Buddy Holly.
Yeah.
And, that kind of era of music has always been one of my favorites. I grew up on it. I can remember my mom playing it all the time.
Do you remember who died with Buddy on that plane?
Richie Valens.
Yeah.
The Big Bopper.
And the Big Bopper, yeah. Mm-hmm. A lot of people forget the Big Bopper.
Don't test me on my music trivia.
Yeah.
But I've also seen the movie with Gary Busey as Buddy Holly.
Okay.
And it was depicted in that as well. Is there anybody who's changed more over the years than Gary Busey?
And he has changed a lot, hasn't he?
He's changed a lot. Not all for the best, unfortunately. In 1956, the Fuller family moved to El Paso, Texas. Bobby joined his high school orchestra the following year. He moved schools and joined the ROTC and played drums in the school band. During his 11th grade year, Bobby and his younger brother, Randy, started building a recording studio in their parents' garage. Bobby was fascinated by electronics and sound engineering and built the studio through trial and error. So, I think you used the word impressive before. I think there was a lot that was impressive about Bobby Fuller.
Yeah. Very talented.
Yeah. Multi-talented. Bobby graduated from El Paso's Technical Center in July 1960. He briefly attended North Texas State University and studied music, but he didn't like school all that much and his grades slipped.
I didn't like school that much either.
And your grades slipped.
Putting it mildly.
And English was one of those subjects. He worked part-time at a store called the Melody Shop and dreamed of being a rock star. In the late 50s, he played drums for local bands, but by 1960, he was ready to start his full-time career. Bobby formed bands called Bobby Fuller and the Fanatics and Bobby Fuller and the Regents. He was always the front man of the bands. According to the El Paso Times, his brother, Randy, played the bass. And I think you kind of have to be the front man if the band name is your name and then another group.
Yeah, it just seems kind of logical. It's weird that you wanted to be the front man when you talked about forming a band with me and another Mike, and we were going to be Mike and the Mikes, and you're like, I'm going to be the front man.
I'm going to be Mike.
Yeah.
Bobby and his musicians won the local Battle of the Bands contest 3 years in a row. The El Paso Times reported that in 1960, Bobby was earning a decent income, and was a local celebrity, but he wanted to grow his fan base.
Which back then was probably pretty hard.
Well, you couldn't just upload yourself on YouTube and gain a following that way.
No, I mean, you were probably at the mercy of radio stations, traveling around, getting in front of them, and just word of mouth.
Yeah, well, think back about some of the biographical movies. You had Coal Miner's Daughter, where they were basically driving to all these different little country radio stations, trying to get them to play their record.
That's when DJs had a lot of power.
They had a lot of power. And then you think about Buddy Holly and Richie Valens and these guys having to jump on planes to hop from one little show to the next because they're trying to reach a wider audience.
Yeah.
On February 22nd, 1961, Bobby's older brother Jack was murdered by his friend Roy Leon Handy. While the two men were target shooting, Handy confessed to murdering Jack and his own father. He was convicted of the murder and later released on parole. Jack was only 31 years old when he died. This made Bobby work even harder on his music career because he knew life could be short and he wanted to be remembered.
It's kind of rough that your brother was murdered.
Well, very rough. But like in this instance, could it also show you how delicate or short life can really be? And can it kind of spur you on to, want to get things done, want to be someone?
Yeah, I think it does one of two things, right? It's either going to really set you back or it's going to put that fire underneath your ass to say, I got to get moving, man.
I think you're right. According to The Guardian, in 1961, Bobby and Randy built a studio in their parents' den. Bobby talked his parents into buying equipment for him.
Well, you got a little studio right here.
I do. And your point is, and
really?
You are, and this is pertaining to what?
Really no point whatsoever.
Bobby founded 2 record labels to release his music, Eastwood and Exeter. Bobby's first single was a song called You're in Love, which was produced in late 1961. Eventually, the band started receiving more radio time and producing more singles. His biggest hit was a cover of I Fought the Law. I think a lot of people will remember that song. It's kind of been one of your anthems throughout the years.
It has been.
Fought the Law and the Law won.
They always win with me.
I Fought the Law was originally written by Buddy Holly's friend Sonny Curtis and performed by a band called the Crickets. Bobby took the song and made it his own. Eventually, Bobby would call himself the rock and roll king of the Southwest.
That's some confidence there to make you the rock and roll king of the Southwest.
Well, to make yourself that.
Yes.
Randy would tell Unsolved Mysteries, they said he'd have been like Elvis Presley. Everybody that knew him would describe him as a musical genius. In 1963, Bobby's father helped his sons open a teen dance club called The Rendezvous. Huge crowds came to see Bobby Fuller and the Fanatics, who were the house band. Bobby's band changed musicians fairly often because he demanded perfection from himself and others, but Randy was always on bass. So Randy didn't change, and obviously Bobby didn't change, but it sounded like the other musicians did.
Because he wanted perfection.
Yeah, and I want to talk about that idea a little bit. Someone who strives for perfection, not only in themselves, but kind of demands it from others as well. That person can do some great things. They can also rub you the wrong way very, very quickly.
Oh, yeah. Yes, they can.
It's kind of a double-edged sword, isn't it? And I know that was directed at me. Bobby's regional fame increased quickly. In September 1964, the El Paso Herald-Post reported, England has the Beatles, but El Paso has Bobby. The paper also reported that 6,000 fans showed up to a shopping center to see Bobby and the band.
That's pretty good, because the band that I had, when we went to the shopping center, I think we had 2 dozen, and that was family.
And 10 of those were security guards trying to usher you out of the shopping center.
Yeah.
But no, I mean, it does sound as though, he and the band were getting a following. To get 6,000 people to come out,
Pretty good.
That's a pretty good number in El Paso.
Yeah.
Not playing Madison Square Garden at this point. The Rendezvous closed down in 1964 because the crowds were too much to manage due to excessive fighting and alcohol inside the club.
You know who they needed?
Dalton. Have you seen the new one, by the way?
Yeah, it was the stunt double.
Oh, for which one, Dalton or McGregor?
Both.
Bobby and Randy wanted to open an even bigger club, but their father refused to co-sign on the loan because he thought it was too much responsibility for them. Bobby decided it was time to move to LA to further his music career. His first trip to LA was mostly unsuccessful. The major record labels weren't interested in him, but Bob King from Delphi Records reached out. He advised Bobby to polish his music and come back in a year. But Bobby returned just a few months later in late 1964. He brought along Randy, a guitarist named Jim Reese, and a drummer named Dwayne Quirico. They signed with Delphi Records and renamed themselves the Bobby Fuller Four. No doubt Bobby Fuller was at the helm because every name they had for whatever band iteration was going on at the time, his name was in the title.
Yeah, I mean, you had to be pretty confident about yourself to do that. But, I mean, to his credit, a lot of bands did that back then, right? The lead singer, the main star of the show, the band, their name went first, and then... Yeah.
But there was a lot of bands who didn't do it that way. I mean, the Doors, the Rolling Stones.
And I think just some groups just wanted to have just a common name, not put anybody's real name in the mix. Like I talked to my band and said, let's just be the Giblets.
I do think the practice kind of went more that way as the years progressed.
Yeah.
Bob Keane told Unsolved Mysteries. Bobby was one of the most on-purpose musicians I've ever met in my life. He was going to be a hit. He was going to do it.
Just super focused.
Yeah, and I think what you're hearing is a lot of people say, there was no doubt this guy was going to make it and he was going to make it big. People really felt that way. Their first album, KRLA King of the Wheels, was released in 1965. It contained a new version of the band's hit, I Fought the Law. The Bobby Fuller Four appeared on TV in June and July 1965 and played at the Rose Bowl concert that year. They continued their TV appearances into late 1965, including the popular show American Bandstand, hosted by Dick Clark.
I mean, that's a big move.
That was a big deal back in the day. And you want to talk about an impressive person? Dick Clark hosted stuff for like 95 years.
Oh, yeah.
It seemed like he was everywhere.
He was a smart guy.
Bobby was thrilled by his success and was willing to put in hours of work with little rest. And I be honest with you, Gibbs, I think a lot of times that's what it takes to be successful. And there just are some people who are not willing to do that. They might have the talent. They could do it, but maybe they're not disciplined or they don't want to give that much of themselves up for something.
Which is fine, but you won't hit that ultimate goal in some cases.
Yeah, or that plateau that you're trying to reach. His mother, Lorraine, told the El Paso Times, fame didn't affect him that much. He didn't party much. I think he liked a nice home better than anything. He liked cars, but all boys like nice cars. He liked girls, so he had lots of girlfriends. But music took priority over everything. Bobby was seen in public with high-profile celebrities and even had a brief relationship with Nancy Sinatra.
What do you mean, these boots are going to walk all over you?
Yes. Elvis was also rumored to have had a relationship with Nancy Sinatra.
Really?
Bobby preferred to have a peaceful private life. It was said that he didn't drink much and only used drugs occasionally. By February 1966, I Fought the Law was in the top 40 on the Billboard charts. The success of that song turned the group into teen idols practically overnight, per The Guardian. And I do think that happened back then. I mean, if you hit, let's say, American Bandstand, or you were on the Ed Sullivan Show, because there were so many eyes on those types of shows. There was much less variety channels to watch. I think people became like overnight teen idols or celebrities or whatever you want to call it.
Well, and also I think at that point, all the radio stations picked up because they knew that it was going to be popular.
Yeah.
And they knew that their listenership would want to hear the song. So they started playing it and get it on rotation, and it just...
And then it becomes like an avalanche, right?
Yeah.
The more you hear it, the more you like it, the more you want to hear something else from them. The group released their second LP and went on a short tour. They soon started the national tour in an effort to grow their fan base across the U.S. The tour was physically exhausting for every member of the band.
But like you mentioned, that's what they did back then, right? They had to really put in the time on the road to make their fan base grow.
Yeah, it was said at one point they traveled 1,800 miles in 4 nights. And, you know, big groups do that today, big stars. They just do it a little differently.
Yeah.
You know, if they have a bus, it's a much nicer bus than I'm sure these guys were riding in, or they have a private plane or whatever it is.
Or they have someone driving the bus instead of them taking shifts, driving, you know.
Driving themselves. But I'm not saying it's not hard what stars do today, because it has to be grueling.
Oh, to be on the road so much?
Yeah. Now, you're doing maybe one show a night. That show lasts, let's say, 2 hours. But I'm sure it's exhausting with all the changing of clothes. I don't know. When my daughters were younger, we took them to see both Taylor Swift and Carrie Underwood. The shows were amazing, but they must have changed costumes, each of them, like 15 times.
Yeah.
It's like every song
was entertainment, man.
Was a costume change. And they're constantly moving. So it has to be a grind. And like you mentioned, being away from home is not easy.
You got to think about all the rehearsals and
yes.
all the promotion tours, stuff you have to do while you're on the road to drive the ticket sales up.
Well, that's a great point. It's not just the 2 hours they're on stage, right? Road manager Rick Stone told the El Paso Times, it was draining. We weren't getting any sleep, but it was rewarding. The band had a wide following in the South. In the summer of 1966, they played in New York and Massachusetts and did a live phone interview with Dick Clark. Again, Dick Clark was everywhere.
He was. America's Top 40, right? He did that too on the radio show. Or was that Dick? Yeah,
I don't know. There's a lot of Dicks out there, but you know, Dick Clark was into everything. I'm sure he had a top whatever radio show as well. I remember Casey Kasem. That was a big deal too.
Casey Kasem.
Back in the day. The band returned to LA in late June. At this time, their new single, The Magic Touch, was a popular hit. The band played at different clubs in San Francisco, which were Bobby's final live performances. But it was said that the crowds were small due to bad weather. The band was exhausted and demoralized. Per the El Paso Times, tensions escalated, and Bobby and Randy got into a physical altercation.
Brothers got a little heated with each other.
And that's going to happen, right? Brothers get into it anyway, but it sounds like they were in a pressure cooker situation, which is going to cause tension, and it's going to increase the chances of altercations happening.
Yeah, and you know, when you're there and you don't have the amount of people in the audience you hope for, you know, bad weather or not, it's still going to be a disappointment. And that's going to carry over, you know. I mean, you got bills to pay. You're on the road. And more importantly, you're trying to grow your fan base. And now looks like it's shrunk. It looks like it shrunk from bad weather. But in your head, you might be thinking, is it bad weather? Or maybe they just don't want to see us.
Well, either way, Bobby was frustrated with the direction his career was going. He decided to break his contract with Delphi Records. He wanted new musicians and a solo career with a different record label. He was unhappy that Bob Keane canceled his upcoming European tour because he had a growing English fan base. The Guardian reported that their relationship soured because Keane was trying to turn Bobby into another version of Ritchie Valens, which alienated the band. Bobby also disliked how much they were touring, because he couldn't spend as much time in the studio making music. However, it was said that Bobby was happier when the band returned to LA. He and the band had a week off, and he thought that he could renegotiate with King. On July 17th, 1966, Bobby drank beers with some of his friends who were visiting from El Paso. It was the last day of his vacation, and he had studio rehearsals scheduled for July 18th. Those who saw Bobby during his week off said he was cheerful and relaxed. He was excited because he planned to purchase a Corvette on the 18th.
Ooh, a 1966 Corvette.
Yeah, those were pretty sweet.
Oh, yeah, they were.
My uncle had a 66. It was baby blue.
Yeah.
And it had the removable hardtop.
Yeah.
And it had the like chrome exhaust down each side.
Oh, man.
It was super, super sharp.
Yeah, sweet.
I don't know what happened to it, but I never got it.
Didn't leave it to you.
No, he did not. There were still ongoing tensions about the breakup of the band, but Bobby and Randy were still close, even though they had been fighting. As reported by the El Paso Times, the discussions about ending the band made everyone uneasy, but not hateful. And you've experienced this, Gibbs. You've got, a couple of brothers. You're going to fight.
It's going to happen.
But you're going to make up. You're still going to be brothers. You're still going to be close. On July 17th, Bobby spoke to his road manager, Rick Stone. He told Rick, "I don't know what's going to happen. Everything's confused right now, but don't worry. You've got a job with me if you want it." Rick went out that afternoon, but returned to Bobby's apartment to drink beers and watch TV. Lorraine Fuller was also there. She was visiting her sons from Washington. At one point in the evening, Bobby left the room to speak to his girlfriend, Nancy Norton, and a friend named Melanie. 3 girls from El Paso also stopped by the apartment to visit Bobby.
Very busy night.
Yeah, it sounds like he was entertaining.
Yes.
Rick fell asleep in the living room just after midnight. Lorraine went to sleep at 1 a.m. after she briefly spoke to Bobby. She told the El Paso Times he was wide awake. He always stayed up playing his guitar and listening to records. I told him good night. That was the last time I saw him alive. Later, I heard him leave the apartment. It didn't disturb me. I don't know why he went out, but I think he probably went to get something to eat. He often did that. Rick also heard Bobby leave the apartment around 2:30 a.m. He woke up to get a glass of water and saw the front door open. This wasn't concerning because he knew Bobby stayed up late. He heard the door shut and knew it was Bobby heading out. All right, I get that last part, but I'll tell you what, if I wake up at around 2:30 in the morning and I notice that the front door is wide open, I am going to be a bit concerned.
Oh, and when you find out that everybody's okay, you're going to be extremely upset at somebody for leaving the door open.
Yeah, but it sounds like he just kind of assumed this was Bobby. He had left the door open, and then just a little bit later, he heard it close. So that must have been, Bobby leaving. But I didn't see anywhere where he actually saw Bobby. So, for him to say it wasn't concerning.
You disagree.
Well, I disagree in 2024. Let's put it that way.
Oh, there you go. Yeah.
In the 1960s, maybe that, it wasn't that big a deal. The last known person who saw Bobby alive was his friend Lloyd Essinger, the apartment building manager. He didn't speak to the El Paso Times, but according to Bobby's autopsy report, he and Lloyd had beers in his apartment around 3 a.m. Essinger reported that Bobby was in good spirits. So, the one thing I want to talk about is obviously this is a guy who stayed up late.
Right.
I'm sure his schedule was pretty strange compared to maybe a lot of people's. A lot of those musicians, they're working late, they're amped up, they probably stay up late, they sleep in. It's my thought.
Yeah, when you're on the road a lot, your schedule's definitely going to be jacked up.
Yeah. And how easy is it going to be to change when you get back?
And do you want it to change if you're going to go right back on the road in a little bit?
Yeah, because he's only off a week, right?
Yeah.
So Lorraine was anxious on the morning of July 18th because Bobby didn't come home. Rick went to the studio at 8:30 a.m. for their scheduled recording session. The band waited for Bobby until 2:30 p.m. they decided to give up and head home for the day.
Well, I think I would have probably been concerned.
Well, my thought is they had to be concerned. Based off of all of the things we've said about Bobby Fuller, this is a guy who was a perfectionist. He was driven. Was he going to miss this session? And I get it. Things come up and all of that. But if they're scheduled for 8:30 and 2:30 rolls around and he's not there, obviously he's not coming. I think there's got to be a bit of concern.
And maybe a little bit of them being pissed off too. Like, we wasted our whole day because you failed to show up. Are you out running around with some women? Are you out? What are you doing?
Buying your new Corvette?
Getting your new Corvette?
Ty Grimes and Mike Ciccarelli, two of Bobby's friends from El Paso, went to his apartment just before 5 p.m. They noticed that his car wasn't there, but they decided to ring the doorbell anyway. They noticed a car pulling in behind them, but Ty said he didn't pay much attention to it. Bobby had invited them over a day or two earlier, but he wasn't answering the door. As the men were ringing the doorbell, Lorraine Fuller walked down the back stairs to check the mail. She saw Mike's car and Bobby's Oldsmobile in the parking lot. She ran down the stairs to Bobby's car and opened the driver's side door. She was hit by the strong smell of gasoline and found Bobby in the front seat. The keys were in the ignition and his hand was on the keys. She thought he was asleep and called his name. But when she took a closer look, she saw he was dead. So obviously tragic, right? For a mother to find her son dead in his car. Mike and Ty saw Lorraine run up the stairs to call the police. She left the door open and they saw Bobby in his car. Ty claimed he saw dried blood on Bobby's shirt. Blood was also found on the car seat per Unsolved Mysteries. His body and clothing were soaked with gasoline. Rick Stone received word of what happened and came to the apartment. He saw that Bobby was holding a hose connected to a can of gas on the floorboard. He noticed that Bobby's hair was covered in gas, like it had been poured on him. So already, we're getting some really strange pieces of information.
Yeah.
He's doused in gasoline?
Yeah. Hair soaked.
So we've got to figure that out. And we still have to figure out, what ultimately caused his death. The car had been in the parking lot for a few minutes when Lorraine Fuller saw it, but Bobby was in full rigor mortis, which meant he'd been dead for hours.
So even more mystery, right? How did the car get there if it was only there for a few minutes?
Yeah, because I had the question when we were talking about, his two friends coming up and knocking on the door. How could they not have seen Bobby in his car? You would have thought they'd have recognized his car, but the thinking is the car wasn't there and it arrived right after them. Now, was it the car that they said they saw pulling in behind them? I don't know. It didn't make sense to Lorraine because she knew Bobby's car was gone all night and all day. She insisted she didn't see the car until 5 p.m. when she went outside to check the mail. Record label owner Bob Keene arrived at the scene while the police were there. He told Unsolved Mysteries that he saw a detective throw the gas can in a dumpster and say, "It's just another rock and roll punk. He committed suicide," or something like that.
That's nice.
Yeah, if he really did say that, the very least, it's extremely callous. But I want to talk about throwing the gas can in a dumpster.
Dumpster fire or what?
Do we not want to save that for evidence?
Yeah, there's a lot of things wrong about that. Throwing away evidence, potential evidence.
And what is a really kind of a nasty comment. Now, this is secondhand, right?
Sure.
It all comes secondhand. Bobby's autopsy was performed on July 18th, but the final report was not submitted until October 17th. His cause of death was asphyxia due to inhalation of gasoline. The police initially suspected that Bobby drank gasoline. The report did not detail the contents of his stomach, but noted they were not remarkable. And I thought that was a little strange because you would think, Okay, you do an autopsy. The stomach contents would be kind of laid out in detail just for posterity.
Right.
The coroner did not estimate how long Bobby had been dead. His body was partially decomposed, but that was likely due to the high summer temperatures and skin burns caused by gasoline fumes. The medical examiner noted, on opening the body, the organs and incised tissue smelled strongly of gasoline.
Meaning what?
Well, it makes it sound like there was gasoline inside the body. But if the body's covered in gasoline, isn't the whole place going to smell like gasoline?
Yeah, I think that's pretty likely.
Are you going to get a stronger smell of gasoline upon opening the body than already exists if this man's hair and body is already covered in it? So, there are some things here that seem a little strange that have to be sorted out.
I mean, if somebody was upset with him and was trying to do something to him as they were pouring the gas over him, he could have ingested the gas then, or they could have pulled his head back as they poured gas on him and he might have swallowed some of the gasoline, or maybe he decided to drink the gasoline on his own. We don't know.
According to the El Paso Times, Bobby's mode of death was ruled an accident, but there were question marks next to the boxes indicating accident and suicide. Now, I could understand how it would be possible to think that this could have been a suicide. The accident, I'm struggling with a little bit.
Yeah, I don't get that at all.
I mean, is it possible to accidentally spill gasoline on yourself? Well, sure. I'm sure a lot of us have done that in some way or another. But would you not get out of the car quickly, take your clothes off, go take a shower, get washed? You're not going to sit in that car and just breathe in the gasoline fumes that you've spilled on yourself.
And you're not going to douse it on top of your head.
Yeah, no, exactly. You're not going to accidentally pour it on your head. On July 19th, blood testing found that Bobby did not have drugs or alcohol in his system. The police believed Bobby's death was a suicide from the beginning. They didn't impound his car or dust for prints, which angered his friends and family.
Because they don't think it's any type of foul play.
Yeah, which we've talked about before, right? Is that the right way to do it? And I would say no.
Yeah, I think unless you 100% know for sure, why wouldn't you go ahead and impound the car, keep it for a little bit of time? Why would you not keep the gasoline can?
Dust for prints, all of that stuff. There's no way that this could have been a clear-cut case of suicide. I mean, how many suicides have you heard of, Gibbs, that have happened this way? I can't think of one.
No.
Randy Fuller told the El Paso Times in 1982, I don't know if it was a suicide. Because he's my brother, I'd love to say that it wasn't, but I don't know. And I'm sure that's an honest thing.
And that's after him having many years to think about it.
But it also shows you how much time passed without anything really conclusive coming out. But how are you going to be conclusive when you didn't do the work up front?
Well, exactly. You don't have a lot of evidence to go off of, do you?
No, because you either didn't do the work or you didn't, keep the items or whatever. Obituaries published on July 21st in the Los Angeles Herald-Examiner and the Los Angeles Times implied Bobby died of suicide. The papers quoted Lorraine Fuller as saying that Bobby was despondent in recent weeks. The papers reported that the police found no anatomical basis for death and no external injuries.
But we also heard from some of his friends that the days leading up, he was in good spirits.
Yeah, it sounded like that week off maybe had recharged him, rejuvenated him. He was pretty good that week. And I think, that led to Bobby's friends and family believing that foul play was involved. They were insistent he was not depressed leading up to his death. Lorraine said, per the El Paso Times, he was not depressed. I never saw him actually depressed. He'd get down in the dumps occasionally, but he never let it get to him. And who doesn't get down from time to time? We all have bad days.
We do.
Now, is it possible to be despondent about something that happens during your day? Yes. Does that mean technically that you're depressed, or is it a sign of a long-term depression? No, not necessarily.
Yeah, you just get back up again.
Yeah, sometimes you just have a really bad day, but the next day you're fine. The El Paso Times noted a few inconsistencies between Bobby's autopsy report and witness testimony. The autopsy report stated that the car doors were closed, but not locked, and the keys were not in the ignition. However, Rick Stone and Lorraine Fuller said they saw the keys in the ignition. The report did not make note of it, but Ty Grimes, Rick Stone, and Randy Fuller said they saw dried blood on Bobby's shirt. The report did not note external injuries, but Rick and Lorraine saw abrasions on Bobby's skin. Rick recalled to the El Paso Times there were scrapes on his elbow and face. The slippers he was wearing were badly torn up at the toes, as if he had been walking through gravel, and his little finger looked like it was broken. So we do have some real discrepancies here.
Yeah.
Between what people said they saw and what was noted on the autopsy report. In 1982, El Paso County Coroner Juan Cotton explained that volatile fumes can cause sloughing of skin and that the burned patches of skin were possibly misinterpreted as injuries.
But it could also have been real injuries.
Yeah, could have been. Finally, the autopsy report indicated Bobby's bladder was distended, which suggested he was unconscious for a long time before he died. If he was unconscious, how did he get back to the apartment in the driver's seat of his car? Bobby's friend, Robin Vinikoff, claimed he and a few friends came to Bobby's apartment at 3 p.m. On July 18th, he said he saw Bobby's Oldsmobile in the parking lot. However, Lorraine maintained that the car was not in the parking lot at that time. Based on statements from Bobby's friends Ty and Mike and Lorraine Fuller, the car got there within a short window around 5 p.m. Officials never issued an explanation for this.
But it's a key piece of evidence or a key piece of the puzzle.
Yes.
Was the car there before? And if it wasn't, based on what his friends and his mom said, then how did the car get there if he was dead?
When I still go back to his friends coming to the apartment, before 5 o'clock, I don't know how they wouldn't have seen him.
Right.
Seen his car, noticed him inside the car.
So did someone drive the car there and then took him from the passenger side and pulled him over to the driver's side and then fled the scene?
It's one theory. It's one theory that we'll have to explore. Ty Grimes and Mike Ciccarelli were under suspicion in the beginning. Once they were cleared, investigators asked them to create a detailed timeline. Ty said it took them 3 minutes to get from the parking lot to the apartment and back to their car. And I think that's where this really short window of time comes from, right? It comes from their statements. It comes from Bobby's mother's statements. According to Rick Stone, 2 PIs were hired to look into Bobby's death. One of them abruptly quit, and the other left town after claiming he was threatened.
So again, this is something alarming to me, right? I mean, you have a PI that just gets up and quits. Most likely someone probably threatened him. And then you have the other one that did leave town because he said he was threatened. Who's threatening him?
Well, I think you can make the assumption that if they really were threatened or forced out of town or forced to quit, it was by someone who had a hand in Bobby Fuller's death. Because who else would need to threaten a PI looking into his death other than the person or persons responsible? Rick gave his theory to the El Paso Times, saying, I think Bobby may have been murdered out of vengeance for something he was innocent of. Maybe someone was going to set him on fire and chickened out, or maybe they only meant to rough him up, but the scare went too far. Maybe what started as a threat ended in a murder. And I can see some different scenarios there. This thing about him being doused with gasoline, I mean, that is stuck in my mind.
Yeah.
How many movies have you seen? And granted, I know they're movies, but how many movies have you seen where the threat is made by pouring gasoline on someone and then saying you're going to light them on fire if they don't, tell you what you want to know, agree to do something you want them to do, whatever it may be. Is it possible that there was a scenario like this, but he died due to, inhalation of the gasoline or something along those lines?
Yeah, I think it's very likely.
I mean, I think it's one theory that we have to look at for sure. The other band members were fearful that if Bobby was murdered, they would be targeted next. The night after Bobby died, Randy Fuller and Rick Stone were outside guitarist Jim Reese's apartment, just a few blocks from Bobby's place. They claimed they saw 3 men get out of a car and burst into the apartment. One of them was carrying a large stick and the other had a Coke bottle. They asked for Jim and left when they realized he wasn't home. Jim swore he had no idea who they were. One theory revolved around Bob Keane, as Bobby was the third artist with his label to die under disputed circumstances. The other two were Richie Valens, who died in a plane accident with Buddy Holly and J.P. Richardson, and Sam Cooke, who was shot by a motel manager in Los Angeles. His death was ruled a justifiable homicide. And Sam Cooke is one of my all-time favorites.
I remember that.
I think I've mentioned it before. I love all his music. Bob Keane spoke to Unsolved Mysteries about his relationship with Bobby leading up to his death, saying Buddy Holly was his god and he wanted to play like Buddy Holly. And I was constantly saying, no, don't do that because you're Bobby Fuller. You have your own talent. We were at odds sometimes in actually making the music the record. And I don't know if there's much that you can really put into that theory. Yes, Richie Valens did die in a plane crash. Was that a murder or was that just an accidental plane crash? And I think to make all three of them, Bobby, Richie, and Sam Cooke, into this scenario where Bob Keane was getting rid of artists, I'm assuming Bob Keane made a lot of money off of these individuals. Now, there was talk that Bobby was going to split, but as we said, it seemed like they had reconciled and he was trying to renegotiate with Bob Keane. So why would Bob Keane want to have Bobby Fuller killed when he still stands to make a bunch of money from him or off him? So that one's a little tough for me.
For me too.
In 1998, Randy Fuller did an interview with the El Paso Times where he questioned the suicide theory. He said, who would pour gas on himself in a hot car? I just think he got in a bad situation that night, met the wrong dude, and couldn't get out of it. I'm 99.9% sure that it wasn't an accident or a suicide.
I kind of agree with him. I mean,
I've been thinking pretty much this exact thing the whole time we've been going through it. If you did want to end your life, would you think about doing it by pouring gasoline on yourself?
I would say no.
I would say no too. I don't even know how many people would understand how you would die from gas inhalation. Yes, I get it. It could happen. It sounds like it would be a very terrible way to die. Not quick, not painless, very painful, nasty.
And then the possibility of catching yourself on fire during that process, the pain that you would feel.
Or somebody coming along and finding you and opening the door.
Yeah.
And now you've just really hurt yourself by pouring gas all over yourself. And it just doesn't make a lot of sense. The Times also spoke to Rod Crosby, Bobby's friend and a musician. Crosby said he was not street smart, so he did hurt himself from the standpoint of not knowing how ugly things could be in LA. Story has it that he was having a fling with the girl of a low-level mobster. He wasn't aware of that until it was too late. My theory is that they just wanted to work him over, but things went awry. So it wasn't the result of organized crime, so much as disorganized crime. But nothing's going to happen now more than 30 years later. We'll just never know what really happened.
Well, I can see somebody in the mob doing something like this.
Well, it goes back to kind of my movie trope, right? We're going to scare you. We're going to pour gasoline on you and threaten to light you on fire. And that's going to cause you to never look at this girl ever again.
Right.
Talk to this girl, have anything to do with this girl. Unsolved Mysteries covered this theory during their segment on Bobby's death. They reported that Bobby was seeing a girl named Melody who was already in a relationship. So that's a possible theory. Now, I didn't say that she was in a relationship with a low-level mobster, but would it even have to have been a mobster? Could it just have been a jealous lover?
Yeah, it could have been anybody, right?
Well, most people don't like it when you're having a fling with their girlfriend.
No, they don't. But the mob really doesn't like it.
Bobby's friends and his mother knew that he was seeing her, but they knew almost nothing about her. Some believe Bobby was keeping their relationship secret because Melody's boyfriend allegedly had ties to the mob. So again, these are all theories, and we'll talk about, our favorite theories here at the end, but according to El Paso Times journalist Edna Gunderson, the boyfriend was a, quote, nefarious character who was operating nightclubs in LA and had a reputation for violence. So if that is true, I do think it maybe lends a little bit of credence to the theory that, this was a jealous person who found out that Bobby Fuller was having, a fling with his girlfriend, and he either decided to scare him from having this relationship and it went awry and he died, or something to that effect, something along those lines.
Somehow had a hand in it.
Yeah. Randy said that Bobby was supposed to go to a party with Melody the night before he was found dead. Melody was supposed to drive him to the party and introduce him to a lot of big time people. Randy asked Bobby not to do anything that would get him into trouble, and he promised not to. Now, no one knows exactly what happened at this party. If the party actually occurred, it's possible that this is where Bobby went when he left his apartment in the middle of the night. There were rumors that Bobby overdosed, and the people at the party tried to cover it up. But this was discredited by the fact that Bobby had no drugs in his system. So I think that's a theory that you can probably throw out.
I think so too.
Based on the autopsy, they would have found, drugs in his system, and they just didn't. After Unsolved Mysteries covered the case, Melody called and confirmed most of their facts, but said she was never involved with someone connected to the mob. She also said she was not with Bobby when he died, and she had no knowledge about any party that allegedly occurred on the night he died.
Well, if you believe her, that takes care of that theory.
Well, it takes care of the theory of the mob and it having to do something with the party. Does it completely remove the fact that it could have been the act of a jealous boyfriend? And I don't know that it does. Bobby's cause of death was officially changed from suicide to accident after the episode came out. And I found this very strange. From the beginning, we talked about the fact that I think there was a document that had both accident and suicide checked. And we've talked a lot about the suicide angle. Let's talk about the accident angle, because I'm having a lot of trouble picturing how somebody accidentally pours gasoline over the top of their head and then accidentally continues to sit in a hot car breathing in these fumes.
Well, there's no way it could be an accident.
It doesn't seem like it, right?
It's not even plausible.
I mean, have you ever accidentally poured a can of Coke over your head? No, I haven't either.
But certainly not, and surely not gas.
Yeah, I mean, don't call me Shirley, but I get where you're going, and I'm at that same place. I'm having more trouble with the term accident than I am even with the theory of suicide.
Yeah. I mean, the only way you're going to get doused with gasoline is that you do it to yourself for a reason, or somebody else does it to you for a reason. Not accidental.
I've gotten gasoline on me while filling up a mower, or, I pull the nozzle out of my truck too quickly or something. But it's a little bit. I mean, we're talking over somebody's head.
Yeah, you're not like that movie with Ben Stiller where you're at the gas pumps and you're showering him with gasoline. I think it's called Zoolander or something like that.
Oh, is that the one where he plays the male model?
Yeah, I think he wanted the building to be tiny building. Remember, he's like, and I want a building for all these tiny people in this tiny building. You don't remember that part, do you?
Yeah, I remember that movie. I think I watched it. I do not believe it was very good from what I remember. Not his best work. In 2015, Randy Fuller and Miriam Lena published the book, I Fought the Law, The Life and Strange Death of Bobby Fuller. Fuller and Lena noted that LA's police chief William Parker died of a heart attack 2 nights before Bobby's body was found, and the investigation into Bobby's death was not a top priority due to the chaos in the department at that time. The book presents another potential person of interest, Morris Levy, the owner of Roulette Records. Levy was once described as the godfather of the American music business. Well, that's pretty interesting because I've never heard of this guy.
Me neither.
But according to the book, Levy's business partners and associates included members of the infamous Gambino and Genovese crime families. Okay, those are very well-known crime families.
But you don't want to cross.
You don't want to. Shortly before Bobby died, Bob Keane's label signed an exclusive distribution deal with Roulette. Bobby's last single, The Magic Touch, was written by a writer associated with Roulette. Randy believes Bobby's death had to do with a business deal he wanted to back out of. He remembered seeing Bobby and Keane with a third man during their time in New York in the spring of 1966. He couldn't remember who the third man was, but he identified a photo of Morris Levy without knowing his name. Okay, so this is pretty interesting. If this guy really had connections with, the Gambino and Genovese crime families, we did talk about Bobby wanting to get out of this deal with Bob Keane.
Yeah.
But then we also said that he kind of thought about it and he wanted to reconcile. Could it be that during this period, before Bob Keane knew that he was thinking about coming back to him, he got in touch with this Levy character and they tried to make him an offer he couldn't refuse.
Yeah, we need some pressure put on him to not leave us.
And that would be a lot of pressure. Having someone douse you in gasoline and maybe threatening to set you on fire. But again, could it have been a scare tactic that went horribly wrong because, he died as they were trying to, put pressure on him? And I do think it's a pretty valid theory. Again, just a theory. Over 50 years later, the circumstances surrounding Bobby Fuller's death remain a mystery. It's possible that Bobby was struggling and hiding the full extent of his depression from the people closest to him. However, he was making plans for the future and seemed hopeful about starting a solo career. We will most likely never know if Bobby Fuller died of suicide or if he was murdered. And as we wrap this one up, Gibbs, I do want to go back and just kind of separate out the 3 most talked about scenarios. Number one is that, Bobby Fuller took his life.
Right.
And for me, it's just such a strange way to do that I have a lot of trouble believing that, someone would make the decision to do it that way.
It just doesn't make any sense to me.
It doesn't. I mean, I don't want to talk about all the different ways to do it, but people know what they are and
right.
what most people would choose. Dousing yourself in gasoline is not even on the list, it seems like. So then, you look at the accident theory. And again, I just don't see it. I don't know who has an accident where they somehow pour gasoline over the top of their head.
Yeah, that's not even in play for me.
And if you did that, wouldn't you immediately get out of the car and go get help, or at least, jump in the shower, pour water over yourself, do something?
Yeah, you just wouldn't sit there.
Call an ambulance or, something like that. And so it really kind of leads me to this third theory. And it's that someone, for whatever reason, whether it was a jealous boyfriend, it was someone who didn't want Bobby to back out of his record deal, attempted to apply pressure on him to get them to do what he wanted, or to get them to stop doing what they didn't want him to do. And so they doused him with gasoline. They threatened to set him on fire, but the fumes killed him during the process. And that is a theory that I can wrap my mind around.
Yeah, you can get behind that one, right?
Yeah, a little easier than some of the other ones. Yeah. And I think you've kind of touched on it, but, could it have been that whoever was involved drove Bobby's car back to the complex, moved him over into the driver's seat, and then left? Now, obviously, there was no CCTV footage in the 1960s. This person was not going to be caught on camera. You do have conflicting statements, though, from people who said the Oldsmobile was there, the Oldsmobile was not there, it didn't get there until a certain time. So I don't know. If we're going through things on the plausibility meter, I'm kind of leaning towards that last one.
Yeah, I just think who would benefit from trying to scare him to get him back on track? The mob, his producer, maybe some members in his band, if he was going to try to go solo without him.
Yeah, that's something we haven't touched on.
Right. And then potentially, I guess, if he was dating a married woman or seeing a married woman or just seeing somebody that had a boyfriend, maybe they got upset enough to do something to him. Outside of those, I can't think of any other reason.
No, I can't either. Now, the band, really, there's no theory that I saw put forth that they were involved. I mean, you do bring up an interesting point. If he's going solo, could there be some people upset about that? Well, sure.
Yeah.
Because there's not going to be a band, which means they're not going to be in the limelight. They're not going to be making the same amount of money. I just didn't see anything in the research where someone put forth a theory that was based on that. But it's a perplexing case, no doubt about that. I can definitely see why his family had a very serious issue with the ruling of suicide. And the fact that they changed it to accident, so many years later, I thought was a little strange too. Seems like there should have been another box.
Yeah.
Undetermined, or I'm sure there's another word that we normally use that I just can't think of right now, but something along those lines.
Yeah. I mean, if it's unknown, it's unknown. You don't know. So
yeah.
Why say it's something that you really don't know?
But that's it for our episode on the mysterious death of Bobby Fuller. And I think there's very little chance that this one will ever be conclusively solved.
Yeah, I agree with you. I think it's at a point where it's probably never going to happen.
No, there's no evidence, I don't think, that's there somebody's going to be able to use new technology on or anything like that, like there is in some of the unsolved cases that we do. But we have some voicemails. You want to check those out?
Let's hear them.
This is Nicola calling from Anchorage, Alaska. Actually, I'm visiting my parents I live in Freiburg, Germany with my family. My husband and I are big fans of your podcast. We listen to you on the way to work and walking the dog and cleaning. And I always have to laugh when people tell you that they listen to you falling asleep, because that's exactly what I do as well. If I can't sleep, I put in my AirPods and listen to the two of you, and then I doze right off. So thank you for that as well. I have a couple of ideas for new episodes, 3 cases that actually happened right near Freiburg, where I live. I'll send you an email with the details. One is an unsolved case of a hiker that went missing in the Black Forest. She was hiking by herself and disappeared in 2020 and hasn't been found yet. And then 2 solved cases near Freiburg. And I think they're all quite interesting. If you need help with the translations of any articles, you can let me know. And I'm happy to help you with that from German. We love the show. We're both Team TCAT, and stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Nah, my German is very good.
Okay.
I can translate.
And the accent, you sound like a little bit like Arnold Schwarzenegger.
Yeah.
And he wasn't even German.
He was not right next door in Austria. Bump you up.
But, that would be very interesting to do some cases out of Germany. Yes, obviously we would need help with the translation. I've tried some of that Google Translate stuff.
Yeah, never.
It does not seem to work that well for me.
I think we've done at least 1, if not 2 cases in Germany.
Yes, I think we have.
Yeah, but we could do more.
Could we?
Could.
I think we could.
Maybe we will.
I think that's a correct statement.
Yes, it is.
But we appreciate that, and I'll look for the email, definitely.
Thank you.
I have a case suggestion. I know a girl who is out in Arizona who was recently, in 2022, murdered in her apartment. She's only 19 years old. The case is still unsolved. Her name is Rachel Hansen. I would love if you guys could cover it. I think the case could definitely use some...
Uh-oh, it cut off.
It did.
But we got the pertinent information.
Right.
So that is a case that we'll definitely look at. It's pretty recent, so we'll have to see how much information is out there.
Yeah.
Because that's the problem we run into sometimes with some of the more recent cases.
Yeah.
There's just not enough information out there to really do an entire episode, which is sad because you want to cover some of the more recent because you figure that maybe there's a little more traction to be gained.
Yeah.
The more recent that they are.
But we certainly can look into it.
Yeah, we definitely will. All right, buddy, you got anything else?
That's it.
Then that is it for another episode of True Crime All the Time Unsolved. So for Mike
and Gibby,
stay safe and keep your own time ticking.
Pluto TV has over 300 channels and thousands of TV shows and movies for whatever mood you're in. Just open the app and something good will already be playing because it's curated by people who love TV as much as you do. So if you're in the mood for comedy, there's 18 channels that'll make you laugh. Looking for drama? We got so much of it, you'll cry tears of joy. Reality shows, game shows, sports, Star Trek, and even more Star Trek. No matter what mood you're in, there's something on Pluto TV. Just download the app and start streaming. Pluto TV. Stream now, pay never.